Okay, welcome everyone. I call this meeting to order. The roll call has been taken by the clerk. This meeting is held in a hybrid format in accordance with the electronic participation policy for virtual meetings. The full corporate policy 50 regarding electronic virtual meetings is available online to review. Staff and delegates participating virtually are reminded to keep their video and microphones off until requested by the chair or members of the committee. All cameras for virtual committee members shall remain on to ensure quorum. Members of the committee shall indicate if they wish to speak by physically raising their hand. Members who are present in person will be given the opportunity to speak. Participants. All members of the committee will vote by a physical show of hands. Please leave your hand raised until the chair has indicated the result of the vote. In the event of a connection or service interruption that occurs that affects quorum, we may recess for up to 15 minutes to regain quorum. Quorum is not achieved, the meeting will be adjourned. All rules for delegations under the city's procedural bylaw will continue to apply. We'll now move on to item 2, which is declarations of conflicts of interest. Does anyone have a conflict with any item on the agenda this evening? Seeing none. There are no presentations or delegations for tonight's meeting, so we'll move on to item 4.1, which is the circulation of a heritage impact assessment for 58 Morrell Street for review and comment. I'll ask Jamie Webb and Megan Hobson to come forward and to provide an overview of your assessment. As a reminder, you will have 10 minutes inclusive of questions. So when you're ready, you're free to go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Megan Hobson. I did a heritage impact assessment for Ray Bucci, who has a proposal to redevelop the site. I have a presentation. Do you have that?
It was not sent. If you can just give me a moment, I'll see if I can find it. Megan, are you able to just resend it quickly? I'm not seeing it here.
Oh, okay. Maybe the file was too large. If it's a PDF, you can show it that way, right? That's a smaller file.
Yes.
It went to Brantford clerks.
It should be clerks@brantford.ca.
It was email that I got about the meeting.
So sorry, can you resend that to clerks@brantford.ca so that she's able to put it up on the screen?
Yep.
Thank
I'm
you.
doing that right now. Okay, let me know if that comes through.
Okay, there you go. I think you're ready now.
Thank you. Apologies for that, everybody. Right, so at 58 Morrell Street, it's a former Robbins and Myers factory on Morrell Street. The map on the left shows you the site beside the railway spur in the middle of a residential district in West Brantford. On the right, images of large industries in Brantford, including the Robbins and Myers factory that we're discussing today. Next slide, please. Could I have the next slide, please? So Robbins and Myers manufactured motors. They were best known for their fans, but they manufactured a number of different small motors. They're sort of a company that used new technology at the beginning of the 20th century and made these electrical motors. The company is based in Ohio, and they set up a Canadian plant in Brantford. So it's one of the earlier factories in that area, sort of setting up their building in the early 1920s. And by the 1950s, this photo on the bottom right of the building that we're discussing today, you can see it's still, that's the older section there, still pretty much intact in the 1950s. And you could see the large number of employees that were employed there, many of them who lived in the neighborhood and the surrounding streets. Many of them still live in the neighborhood and worked at the factory for many years. Some of the products that they produced, one of the tags from a product actually from the Brantford plant on the top left, and their logo with the letters for Robbins and Myers on the flag that they used on a lot of their products in the 20s and 30s. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is the site, how it looks today from Morale Street. So you can see that older portion with that kind of stepped profile with the office block in the center, factory on either side, and then extensions to the left, later additions. And you can see still the concrete wall along the frontage was slightly raised up above the street. Next slide, please. So it's, as you know, one of the brownfield sites in Brantford where industry is no longer happening and where redevelopment is anticipated. And as this is a residential area, the residential use is probably the most appropriate change. And this is the proposal that is coming forward for this site, is to redevelop it for housing. That requires rezoning. And in order to do that, they have to remove all the contaminated material from the site. Next slide, please. So here we see the site from an aerial view. It's approximately 7.5 acres. So the factory occupies the right side on your screen of the site. The left side, there's open space and a kind of a natural area. And there, I believe there's some natural heritage interest in that section. So they're working through those details. As far as the heritage piece goes, that's what the heritage impact assessment was for. The proposal is to build these townhouses and sort of arrange them around the perimeter, and then leave a space in the center as an amenity space for the residents of the development, and on-site parking for all of the residents. I believe it's over 100 parking spaces, so that parking will be on-site. Obviously, the development does not include the heritage building. So the heritage impact assessment assessed the impact of what a demolition would be in terms of the loss of cultural heritage, mainly being the historical and contextual significance of the site. The architectural significance was considered to be somewhat low because the building had been heavily altered, and also there are a lot of condition issues that were noted. If you go to the next slide, please. So here's a look at the building from the front and the interior. So the interior is not well suited for an adaptive reuse because it's been essentially gutted inside and turned into one open sort of shed-like space inside. You can see the steel beams that have been put in. In the center of that image on the right, you can see sort of the brick piers where there used to be brick walls and factory windows that have all been removed, and it's all been expanded into this sort of larger, more modern factory space. On the left, you can see the front of the building. All the windows have been replaced. That decorative cornice along the roof that gave it a lot of architectural detail has been removed. And also, it's notable that there's a lot of damage in all of the brick, especially along the top. The detailing around the front door is still pretty much there and in fairly good shape, but the doors themselves are being replaced. Next slide, please. So you can see from this angle how that wall on this side, this is adjacent to the railway line, has pretty much all been rebuilt with concrete block because of, I'm assuming, a lot of issues. You can see the brick that is remaining, a lot of it's been replaced, and there's a lot of condition issues along that side. There's a lovely smokestack at the back. It's all been banded and is not in great condition either. And then finally, I think, do I have one more slide? Yep, one more slide. So the recommendations from my report were that there might be an opportunity here to salvage materials. Some of the things that were suggested were some of the details from around the doorway, maybe some of the round bricks from the chimney stack, and that those features could maybe be incorporated in some sort of commemorative feature on the site. The private amenity space might be an opportunity to install something there or along the front so that it would be visible from Morale Street. And I suggested that, you know, they work with staff and this committee and other interested parties to come up with something that might be suitable. And so, sorry, just to very quickly run through everything. I hope that was enough, but that just gives you an overview, and I'm here to answer further questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from members of the committee? Councilor McCreary, go ahead.
Chair, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Are you familiar with the Harding Carpets project?
Yeah, so that development across the street is pretty much, I think, completed now. So we took a look at that site also. And it looks like a great development across the street. It also being turned into residential.
I recall Harding Carpets building was described exactly the way you described this, that it's on a brownfield, of course. The building envelope wasn't pristine, but it was incorporated as part of the development across the street, even though it's exactly what you feet away. So it's a big open space inside. Harding Carpets was a big open space inside. It didn't have a whole lot of architectural merit left, but it was incorporated as part of a more forward-thinking development. Is there an opportunity for you to at the very least mention that in the report, that that's an opportunity that the owners could recognize?
So yeah, so you're saying that it should be included as an example of a type of an adaptive reuse?
Yeah, I think you should. You know, we're talking about a heritage impact assessment, and you know, there's a model for it right across the street. So I think it should at the very least be mentioned in the report. The executive summary seems to talk about a storyboard and some pile of brick, but I think there is some merit in having that discussion.
Yeah, I didn't think that this was a good a building with much potential for that type of an approach, given the condition issues and the extent of
amount of space on the ground that this one does, and they chose to simply retain a portion of that building. So you know, it probably wouldn't make any sense for this owner to retain the entire building. But certainly, the office building might be something that's worth considering. Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Go ahead, Beth.
Wondering why it was that you were not able to look at the interior of the office building.
Oh, because there were still some people using the building when I went there. So there was some machinists working inside and the office was all locked up. So I can go back and arrange access to that area. But I wasn't able to at the time of my site visit. So I did put a recommendation in there that be included as a follow-up.
Please, yes,
Yeah.
because that's the most critical component of the building is the footprint of the office, which has the greatest value for reuse.
Sure,
If,
yeah,
if the rest of the building comes down.
yeah. Yeah,
Anything
but-
else, Bob? Okay. Dan, go ahead.
Is the new development having to do with the lot on the side, or is it just that building itself?
Unfortunately, the planner couldn't be here tonight. He would know more information about the exact boundaries of the property. I was only provided with that very preliminary site plan. You can see there's no elevations or anything like that, so I think they're
Being
still
that
in early stages.
With that empty lot next door, if that's part of the development, has any research ever been done into what was on that property or what is left on that property?
I don't believe that I was required to do that as part of the heritage impact assessment, but perhaps staff could comment on that.
Which property to clarify?
Sure, the main building that they're showing is there, but on the left, there's
The woodlot.
the wood lot. Is that part of the new development?
Yes, that does appear to be part of the
Oh,
development. So
Sorry, yeah, I misunderstood what you said. As
Oh,
far as I
okay.
know, there was nothing on that area from all the mapping that I've seen in aerial photos. Was
I just
I-
wonder if research had been done on the lot.
I just from what I've seen from historic images and aerial photography, there doesn't seem to have been much on there. It was just a work yard.
Anything else, Dan?
Nope.
Anyone on the virtual screen there have any questions for the delegation? No? Okay, I have a couple. You highlighted the natural heritage feature that Dan Brown just mentioned. So that to me would indicate that this is an original woodlot. I don't think any developments ever happened there. And
Yeah.
therefore, there's probably archaeological potential there because you're close to the river. Another thing is, I would agree with my people here that the office building, that should in your heritage impact assessment. I don't know why it wasn't. It concerns the whole property, and that is part of the property. And when I look at the building, I mean that the industrial use part maybe is not good for adaptive reuse, but perhaps that original part of the building where the offices were is more appropriate for adaptive reuse. I'd also point out that from my recent ventures at the blind school, they too had to demolish and the original building there, and they saved that original entranceway, and it is an art piece now, kind of outside about the history of the school. So similarly here, I would also argue that that front doorway is very important, and it could also as well be reutilized potentially in the development, depending on where things go. I'm also, I know that today I looked through and I know that I have an image of the front of that building with a Harding carpet sign on it as well, which was weird to me, but I have a picture of the front of that building, and the heritage impact assessment had about the company's history, and that kind of stuff. It just had informations of examples of the products that they made. So I think it was missing some things there. So I think that's it for our delegation. So we are at the point where we are ready to include comments to be moved forward. So now is the time that we would invite comments from any members of the committee, if any members have any. Hi, Councilor Wall, go ahead.
I just believe that there should be more effort put into adaptive reuse of the existing structures on site for any development that's going to happen there. I mean, it's okay to, document history, but trying to preserve any aspect of that site. I mean, we need housing, so I mean, you know where I stand on that, but there's got to be a way to preserve some element of this. I mean, it's an outstanding structure. I don't know.
Okay, that's a good fair comment. Any other members have comments that they would like to add? Councilor McCurry.
First of all, I think that the impact assessment should take into account the redevelopment of Harding Carpets across the street as a model for this project. That's my first comment. Number two, as Dan said, it could very well be that the woodlot adjacent to the building is in its original form. And I think we should be looking at whether or not that woodlot is a designated woodlot. That should be part of the HIA perhaps. That was my second point. I don't see any reference to the archaeology master plan in respect of our heritage assessment, and that is a matter of record for City of Brantford. And that's probably all the archaeology research that would need to be done at this point in time. But you know, in addition to the built heritage and the cultural heritage, we've got the stuff underground, which is important. And just to come back to what was mentioned about the office building, that was a City of Brantford's intention with the Cockshed property, was to retain the office building. The rest of it was all demolished, and that was only one fire away from still being with us. So I think that's important that at least that portion get the attention that it deserves and have some real consideration.
Okay, good. Yeah, okay. Any other people with comments? Oh, Rob, I see your hand up. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, I would recommend that we, in the comments, support the recommendations that are in section 9 of the impact assessment, that a commemoration of some kind be arranged, and that the groups that are listed to be consulted in that commemoration, they would actually be a part of that process to make that happen. And yeah, I guess that's it for the time being. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Lise, did you have something to add? I thought I saw your hand, or you maybe possibly wanted to add something.
Yes, just that we have a disappearing built heritage as far as our factories and our industrial go. I think in 2010, maybe we had, I think 70 or 60%, and then we lost a huge portion of it. So I think we should try and retain or encourage retaining as much as we can in some way that can adaptively be reused on site or in the public area, just because our industrial heritage is disappearing. That's it.
Thanks for that, Lise. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just to further Lisa's comment that we have lost a great number of our industrial heritage over the past number of years, and every effort should be made to maintain at least some component of these buildings. In the one slide that you had shown of the various industries in Brantford, I think that there's only one or two that still remain of all of those. And this is an industry that did exist 100 years ago. So it does have heritage value.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Rob, do you have your hand up again, or is that the original time?
Yeah, just in connection with the groups listed to be consulted in a commemoration initiative, that perhaps as part of that, those groups could be given a site tour of the grounds and the building, the office building in particular, to give them a better perspective of what's there, and to drive the ideas so that the history of the site can be, we can do the best job we can of preserving the history and that of the former workers.
Okay, we have a give a site tour. Your internet connection cut out a little bit there, so I just want to make sure that that we captured that correctly. Can you repeat that part about the site tour?
Yeah, I was just saying that the groups that were cited to be consulted as part of the commemoration, that they would be able to participate in a site tour of the grounds and facility, the office building in particular, since that has drawn the most comment, so that we can better have an idea of the type of material that's left to work with and what would be most suitable.
Okay. Are you able to put that up on the screen? I know that we've gathered a lot of comments, so I just wanted to have them up on the screen so that everyone is able to see them and make sure that we've captured everyone's comments appropriately. Okay. That's the last one, 0.7. Yeah, it's the last one. Okay. Okay. Anything that did not capture what they were trying to say?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Just some wording changes.
Go ahead.
Point number 2. As a model,
Models,
Yeah.
like
as a model for this site.
of adaptive reuse or
Yeah, that's fine. Adaptive reuse on this.
Appropriate to this site.
what's it? Sorry.
Adaptive
As a model of
There's two
adaptive
people saying two
reuse
different things.
of this site.
for the Robbins and Myers site. So point number 3, the woodlot may be original and may be a designated woodlot. Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Anything else, Councilor McCurry?
Okay, the archaeology. Do we set the office building anywhere? So
I think we should mention the office
Yeah.
building here, right?
Okay, that the.
maybe point number 7, please. The office building. That's ours. Oh, sorry, no.
I
Yeah,
have
the one previous. Get rid of that. Just insert office before building.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
The office building.
There, yeah. And this is part of our listing now, correct?
Through
This
this year,
building is
not,
listed.
not yet. It is in one of the phases that's coming up. It
Okay.
would be phase G. That's why the HA was
Their
required.
timing is impeccable.
Okay. Any other people? Oh, Lise, you want to clarify something?
I think it's 0.6. It mentions retaining the industrial built heritage buildings. The one thing not reflected in there is we do have disappearing industrial heritage buildings. So even if retaining a portion of, but I think it should be noted that we have disappearing industrial buildings. It's not like we have a lot of stock to preserve.
I go back.
Can you take out the dash and just put as industrial heritage?
Yeah.
I think that clears that up. Okay. Any other people want to clarify? I knew we added a lot of things into this one, so I just want to make sure everyone has a good option. Okay. So I need a mover and a seconder for comments. Bev is a mover, and I see Lisa's hand up there as a seconder. So any discussion on our comments? Not, I will call the vote. All those in favor? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I declare that carried. So we'll now move on to item 4.2, the circulation of site plan. I will ask Jason Fleury to come forward to provide an overview of the assessment. And as a reminder, you will have 10 minutes inclusive of questions to present if he is here.
Evening.
Okay, Jason, go ahead.
My name is Jason Fleury from Development Engineering. I'm representing ABT Homes for the proposed demolition of an existing 1.5 story residential unit at 43 East Avenue in Brantford. The proposal is to demolish the existing home and sever the lot to create 2 lots and construct a proposed semi-detached unit to create 2 separate dwelling units. The site is, the official plan designation is low density residential in that area. And the current zoning is residential conversion. The existing neighborhood has a mixture of different types of housing, single family, multifamily, and duplexes, and is primarily residential in nature. The council approved the demolition control application in April 25th, 2017. 43 East Ave is not designated or listed on the city's heritage register under the Ontario Heritage Act, nor is it adjacent to a designated or listed property. It's an existing 1.5-story house with 2-story houses on either side of it. The proposal was subject to site plan control because of the demolition control. It's within the demolition control area, so it's subject to site plan for a minor infill. The applicant received comments from the Heritage Committee and staff with regard to built form. There was a request to move the house up to the minimum 3 meter setback. But the owners wish to retain the 6 meter setback so that there can be parking within the driveway. So each unit will have its own single car garage, an oversized garage, and a single parking space in front. And from a street parking perspective, given the additional driveway, there will be 1 less on-street parking spot available in the neighborhood. We expect that'll have minimal impacts given that the proposed house will have a total of 4 parking spaces available for it, 2 in the garage, 2 in the driveway. The front elevation of the home has a staggered front porches. So the dwelling, the second story extends above each garage where the master bedrooms will be at the front of the house. And then the porches are set slightly up and back with slightly different roof lines to provide a diversity to the architectural design. The proposed building is to be finished in brick and stone. Again, with some varying roof lines to mix things up a bit and blend in with the neighborhood. I don't think I have anything else to add. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Bev, go ahead.
Sorry, did you indicate that the demolition was previously approved?
That's correct.
Because in my review of this evening's agenda, it's indicated that the Heritage Committee was not in favor of demolition, and it went to a committee of the whole. There was a tie, so there was no decision made towards the demolition permit.
So through the chair, on April 25th, 2017 is when council passed the decision to approve the demolition.
Okay.
And it was through that decision that the committee's comments were taken into consideration, and that's where this direction to circulate it to the committee came from. It was under that much older version of demolition control.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions for our presenter?
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
so there are no heritage properties close by that listed or designated? It's just being an older neighborhood, I'm assuming that there should be.
Okay, do you response or not?
Oh, for me,
Yeah,
not to my knowledge, the adjacent buildings are not designated. It's just, it's an older community with a mix of older units. But the
Any
buildings
other-
themselves, the proposed demolition nor the adjacent buildings are designated as heritage buildings.
okay, any other questions for our presenter? Councilor McCreary.
Thanks for coming today. So the building style that you're showing here has to have front yard parking, right?
Correct.
That's not at all in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood. Was there an alternative that was considered in terms of how you could fit 2 units on that site?
It was reviewed, but again, it was the owner's desire to incorporate garages and driveways, not to further exacerbate parking issues on the existing street.
The owner will be building and selling both units?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for our presenter? Rob?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the reason for the demolition, is it because the current building has structural problems? Or is it because the owner wants to put 2 units on 1 lot?
Rob, can you just clarify? We missed the first part of that before the or.
Oh. Is the reason for the demolition, is it because the current building has structural issues? Or is it because the owner wants to put 2 units on the same lot?
Actually, the owner is going to create 2 lots and create 2 separate dwelling units in a semi-detached arrangement. But there will be 2 separate lots. The proposal is actually for a consent to sever and to create 2 building lots from 1.
Okay. Any other questions for our presenter? Rob, is that something else you want to add? Go ahead.
Yes, the second part of my question didn't get answered. Are there structural issues with the present house?
I'm not sure. I can't answer that. I have not assessed the existing unit.
Dan Brown, have a final question?
So the demolition permit's been approved already. And the severance has not been approved yet.
That's correct. We're just going through site plan right now and the consent. And we're.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. I don't see any other questions for the presenter. So,
Yeah, sorry.
okay, sorry, Bev.
You
Go ahead.
mentioned the setback going from 3 meters to 6 meters. How?
The minimum setback in that specific zone is 3 meters, correct?
And this will be 6 meters.
This will be 6 meters to accommodate car parking in front of the unit.
In front of the garage door or in
Correct.
front of the structure?
Both. In front of the garage door, to clarify.
Is there any reason why the structure can't be moved further back on the lot, given the lot is so long? So that
Could
it's
be,
more
but
in keeping with the, I think, the setbacks on either side.
well, my understanding was there was a request to get it closer to the road rather than further back. So we've tried to keep it as close to the road as possible.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you for your time and your presentation.
Thank you.
So we now have comments that can be added. And I anticipate there will also be some questions for staff here. So any comments that we want to add? Dan, go ahead.
Maybe it's a question. Are there listed properties beside this house? I know the house. To me, it looks like there should be.
So through the chair, that was looked at when the application came in, not on this particular stretch of East Avenue. It is an older neighborhood.
Yeah.
But no, none of the houses in this particular block. East Avenue and abutting properties.
Yeah.
So can you give us, I know there was a report attached to this. So can you give us a rundown again of what happened here? We said that it shouldn't be approved and it went through and was not approved. And then all of a sudden somehow got approved without us even seeing it.
So through the chair, and this does predate my time, the initial report was in 2016, and that was the point where, yes, so it came to the Heritage Committee through the demolition control bylaw process. And the committee recommended to council that the demolition application at that time not be approved. So in October of 2016, a committee of the whole community development considered the application. The Heritage Committee's recommendation to not approve was carried on a recorded vote of 5-4. At council on October 25th, Committee of the Whole's recommendation failed on a tie vote. So ultimately, no decision was made. Then came in at a later date, and that was the one that was considered in 2017. So I think it was February 21st, 2017 is when the Heritage Committee considered a second demolition control application for this property. That's in the report that is attached to the memo in section 7. So the Heritage Committee received the report and provided comments to staff for inclusion into a report to Committee of the Whole. That was requesting the lands be placed in site plan control and that the committee get an opportunity to review the development proposal. The committee at the time did iterate that it did not support the demolition of the property. So that was that second round, and it was from that process made the decision to approve the demolition in 2017 and to add this property to the site plan control bylaw and require that it be circulated back to the Heritage Committee when it was submitted. So between 2017 and now, we haven't actually had a Planning Act application. So this is the first Planning Act application that has resulted from that review in 2017. So yes, to those remembering not recommending approval, that is what happened. It did fail on a tie vote, but a second application came in.
And then this is just the fulfillment of
This is, yes,
B2 in that, in those comments.
correct.
Correct. Okay, perfect. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah.
It was very confusing, especially when the presenter indicated that it was approved. So I'm glad that we clarified that for everyone. Councilor McCreary.
Is there a time limit that a demolition control app must be acted on?
Not explicitly. One could have been placed as a condition. That is one of the few conditions that can be placed on a demolition control application, but there's no policy to lapsing by default. So when the decision was made, it could have been done. For example, within 3 years, the building permit will be closed. It's done
Sure.
and everything's finished.
So procedurally, council actually denied the demolition by its 5-4 negative vote.
The first time around.
Yes.
Well, actually, technically, the chair, the council failed to render a decision. The applicant could have appealed to what is now the Ontario Land Tribunal. I think at that point it was still the Ontario Municipal Court. They chose not to
Okay.
appeal for lack of a decision. They just reapplied.
So so it's called differently in the planning process than it is in the council process. You're saying we failed to.
It was considered because no subsequent decision was made when the tie failed. There was no decision.
Okay. Yeah. So the planning viewpoint is different than the clerk's viewpoint in that that would have been seen as a defeated motion, right?
Yes, the item, if the item failed, then there was no, it never made it to council beyond that cow meeting where it failed. And then the second application did make it to council, and that's where it was ratified.
Okay. So thanks for clarifying that long history of this property that we have here. So we're at the stage for comments. So now that we've clarified some of that stuff, does anyone have any comments that they want to add about this property? Rob?
Well, seeing as there have been no stated structural problems with this building, from a heritage standpoint, the committee's original comments from 2016 should still stand. The building hasn't lost any of its heritage value during that time, nor is it under any type of municipal order to be demolished. So I would recommend as part of the comments that our original reasons to oppose the demolition are still valid.
Okay. That's a comment, fair comment. The original reasons for not supporting the demolition are still valid. Any other comments?
I would also more strongly say that the committee still opposes the demolition of the structure. I would also say number two, that permission for front yard parking is detrimental to this neighborhood. And it certainly is something that doesn't need to be there. I guess three, that if the owner wishes to turn this into two lots, there may possibly be a better way that the owner can make their money on this site.
Okay. Any other comments? Members of the committee?
Just to further that, it's going to take away from the heritage character of the area.
Neighborhood, yeah. Okay. So we have two comments then. I don't see any others, so I need a mover and a seconder for these comments. I see Dan as a mover and Jamie Brown as a seconder. Any other discussion on the comments? Is everyone clear about the comments and what we're voting on? See a few heads shaking, so that's good. Okay, then I'll call the question.
Sorry,
Oh, go ahead, Councilor Wall. Sorry.
I was debating whether or not I was going to chime in. So I know that we're commenting saying that we're standing by the decision that the previous committee made. But is it not safe to say that this committee also feels that same way versus not, we don't just agree with them, we also are stating that as well?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Notes that the comments are valid and. echoes
Well, I mean,
the
it's
same-
one thing to say that you support a decision that somebody else made.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I support lots of decisions that were made by other people that doesn't necessarily pretty overwhelmingly that this committee in its current state on this day in 2022 does not support the destruction of this building.
And I think that we reflected that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know that's just like hammering the point home, but I feel like if we're gonna hammer it home, let's do it.
Okay, thank you. Please.
Just wondering, can the comments from the previous meeting from, I guess it would be 2017 or 2016. Since we're referring to them in these comments, can they be carried forward or some way that's easier to look at those as well as comments from today? Do you know what I mean? So it's not so hard to have to look through to find it in the report.
I may not be able to put them on the screen today, but I can, in the comments forwarded to staff, I can say that the below comment, that I may not be able to put them on the screen today, but I can put in the comments that are forwarded to staff, I can say that the below comments and quote them, or that the Heritage Committee supports the below comments from 2016, if that satisfies that, so that they are included, and then they will be reflected in the minutes as well.
Yeah, if committee agrees with that, that'd be great.
And sorry, can you just clarify which comments you were referring to? I think you said 2017. I just want to make sure. Is it the 2017 one or the 2016 one? Or both? In 2016, it was that the demolition application not be approved. And in 2017, it would be that the lands be placed under site plan control, the Heritage Committee be an opportunity to review the redevelopment, and that we don't support the demolition.
Both?
Both. Okay, so 2016.
It has to be by the committee.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for clarifying that, Elise. Any other discussion on the comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we can come back to the Heritage Register project. So was that owner have had notice about our intention to list?
I would have to speak with ASI to be sure. But because council had the authority to issue the approval to demolish, that may have been flagged in the system as a property which had a demolition permit, and therefore it was not evaluated. Because through the project, it was anticipated it would have been demolished earlier. And once council gave that authority under demolition control and without that clause, there was no lapse. So
this house would have been on a future iteration of.
It could have been evaluated. I can't say what criteria would have been assigned or what integrity would have been assigned.
Sure. Would it be fair then in our comments to say that this house could very well have been part of our listing process for this neighborhood?
Could have been reviewed, but for that demolition approval.
Yeah, if we make the language weaselly enough. So let's incorporate that as well. That this house could have been a candidate for listing.
Okay, that's a good comment. Any other discussion on our comments? Maybe can we put those up on the screen now? Because we've added some more. So we're just gonna bring everything up on the screen to make sure that everyone can see our full slate of comments that we have.
Nathan, sorry.
Yeah.
There is one listed or one in the registry in close proximity at the corner of Alfred and East. The one that had previously come before us where they were against the listing in the registry. Which is,
So are you wanting to add a comment about something like that?
well, rather than saying there's no listed buildings in the area, there is. It's just that they're not adjacent to this particular residence.
What was the address again? Sorry, that you mentioned.
It's right at the corner of Alfred and East. It's on the southwest corner. Do
So
you
which
recall which it's the,
Through the chair, it
It's-
might be 54 Alfred,
54 Alpha.
unless that is the one we considered as part of an actual objection report recently.
yes,
That was at our last meeting.
no, it wasn't 54. It
Yeah.
was,
Through the chair, I can't recall the number
Yeah.
at the moment.
But
But it
that's
was a
only,
corner property?
Yeah.
And what corner was it?
Alfred and East,
54 Alfred was one of the objecting properties.
but that was the Georgian white frames,
Was 70 Alfred.
70.
70 Alfred?
Yeah, so there are,
So in that last comment, we could add, and is in proximity to 70 Alfred, which is on the Heritage Register. Is that okay?
Yes.
Does that
because it is,
capture your idea? or not?
Yes.
I think it ties in very well there with what
the heritage.
Dan
Character
mentioned
of
with the
the
Heritage
neighborhood.
Register project. Dan?
I have two comments, I guess.
Oh, okay.
I guess if the property's next door to this house is, if it's not listed, if it's not designated, it's still old enough to have a stone foundation that could be damage to it by digging out, over digging for two foundations beside them. I think that could be an issue as well. My second point would be, if it wasn't assessed for to be listed because there was an approved demolition permit at the time, could we have it reassessed so that we could, so officially put it on the list? Or
Through the chair, from a project scheduling perspective, the item 4.4 on tonight's agenda, that analysis is completed. That'll be the last phase that goes to council before the election. Staff will start on the next phase in December, so there will be quite a bit of time before any assessment could be completed through the register and then actually brought forward. And that's just what I want the committee to be aware of.
I think we,
permit has been approved. Like, we can go back after the fact to put it on the register, so, you know, clearly through its comments tonight, this committee wasn't in support of that demolition, continues to not be in support of the demolition, although it has been approved by council. The, what this report is really asking for is if the committee has any comments on the design of the site plan that's here before you, you know, notwithstanding, you don't really want to. If there's any comments that the committee would like to provide in terms of the appearance of what's proposed there, then certainly provide comment in that regard, because that could get forwarded on to the planner who's working on the site plan. Okay.
I feel that Dan's comment though about the concern about adjacent heritage structures.
listed or
that
not,
is
yeah.
listed or not is a concern. So I feel that we can,
That you have concerns about adjacent heritage properties.
Other
that's
properties,
the construction process. That the construction process may affect adjacent properties and their heritage potential. Something to that effect.
One last comment, the proposed building is entirely out of character with the remainder of the neighborhood. And should incorporate materials similar to that found in the neighborhood for cladding, and fenestration should be complementary to the rest of the neighborhood, and roof line should be complementary. And we could say more, but we won't.
Did you have
Can
sidelights?
you just do a less incorporated materials, comma, roof line? What was the other thing you said? Roof line, materials,
Fenestration
fenestration, that's a good word.
and yeah.
Yeah.
I love it when I have to Google a word.
I don't even know what it is.
It's the windows, it's building.
Oh,
The window openings, yeah.
oh, okay.
The arrangement, proportioning, or design of windows and doors of the building. fenestration.
Let me add one more thing.
Okay.
The owner should take their design cues from properties within the immediate neighborhood. Rather than.
Okay, there we go. We got 8 comments. It's almost one for each of us. So is everyone clear about the comments there now that they can see them all? Good. Okay, good. Okay, so then I'm going to call the question on.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
With
Dan.
my comment of the construction process may affect adjacent, I'd like you to remove heritage properties and just properties.
I think that's fine. That's fair. That's even better, perhaps stronger. Any other questions before I call the vote? Okay, calling the vote. All those in favor of our comments? Thank you. I declare that carried. We'll now move on to item 4.3, which is a proposed alteration to 200 Clarence Street, a designated property under. We now have Amanda Anderson here with us to provide us an overview of this item.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Heritage Committee. My name is Amanda Anderson. I'm a project management coordinator for facilities capital development in the engineering services department for the city of Brantford. So I've been appointed by Rick Cox, who is the director of parks and facilities services, to project manage the renovation at the Greenwood Cemetery, Waddington Crypt. So the north wall of the Waddington Crypt consists of, it's a triple layer wall made up of Ontario-sized clay brick on the inner wall, an air gap with deteriorated block in the middle layer, and Ontario-sized clay brick wall on the outer layer of the wall. So the outer wall has over time shifted, and as a result, there's considerable bowing happening in the northwest and northeast corners of the building. This has presented a cause for safety concern, and it needs to be addressed. As well, the existing clay roof tile on the north side has deteriorated significantly and needs repair. So what we are proposing is removing the outer layer of the Ontario-sized clay brick and the middle layer of the deteriorated block only, reusing as much of that as we can and rebuilding it. We will be installing new 4-inch concrete block in the middle layer, tied every 2 feet to the interior wall. And where we cannot reuse the existing, we will be matching as best as we can to the original. Same with the roof. We'll be reusing as much of the existing clay roof tile that we can and matching as best we can to the original. So that's all that I have for this evening. Thanks so much for your time, and I'm happy to take any comments or questions the committee may have.
Okay, any questions from the committee? Councilor McCreary.
Sure, thank you. Thanks very much for the presentation tonight, and thanks for advancing this project. It's long overdue, as we can see by the photos. In terms of managing the water off the roof, that looks as though that's the culprit in most of this damage, right? Are there going to be eaves troughs installed, or does the water come straight off the clay tile?
Yes, that is correct. We will be installing some type of drainage there, gutters and downspouts, most likely in the, I believe it's in the report. It shows the, I think it's aluminum, I believe is what is in the report.
Okay, that's fair. Now, if you look at the brick on the rest of the building, are we going to be repointing the whole thing?
We're not at this time. That will have to be done eventually, but not at this time. We won't be.
So you've determined it's not. I mean, if you look at the photograph, gosh, sorry, bear with me. Page 3. You look at the photograph. above the tarp, it looks as though there's quite a bit of deterioration in the brick and the capping. Should we not be repairing every bit of damage there while we're at it?
So I'm not sure which picture that you're referring to. I don't have it.
Page 3 in the report, okay? And it's top of the, it's the photograph. It's the only photograph on the page, on page 3.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have the report in front of me. Sorry, I don't have this, but I'm assuming it's your number.
Figure 2. Yeah, I'm just saying there seems to be a lot of other issues to the building that we probably should deal with all at once. As well, we've got looks like the original door, and looks like 3/4 inch plywood over the original window openings. Are those going to be dealt with as well?
So we do have limited budget. Oh, sorry, Patrick just sent me that. We do have limited budget on this project. I do know that there is plans, and there is on the wish list to address that door. And also there's, I believe there's like a cage on the back over the window at the back as well, the plan is to address those as well. But at this time, we only have budget to address the safety concerns. So at this time, the door and the window is not a safety concern, and the repointing at this time is not a safety concern. So we're trying to address the safety concern right now. And then I do believe that the plan is, once there's more budget acquired, then they would address it. If we have enough budget at this time to address those, we can look at those. But at this point in time, I think that the budget that we have will only cover what we're taking care of right now.
Okay, so if this committee can't give you direction, but there may be an opportunity to give you direction from council to undertake the additional work and provide funding. So I'll leave you with that, because it certainly would. I've been worried about this building for years now, and we're finally to the point now where we're actually going to be making some strides, and I'd really like to see it all get completed at the same time. So we'll have a chat with the folks up the food chain, okay, and see if we can get you some more money and a greater terms of reference for it. But thank you. This is most welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor McCreary. Rob, Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, could you tell me what the budget for the project is?
Well, we don't, just because this is going to be publicized, we don't typically like to say what the budget is, only because if the contractor is privy of that information, we just like for it to be a competitive process.
Because, yeah, I noticed that the budget was already approved, even though the application hasn't been approved yet. Is that a normal practice?
That is honestly a question I cannot answer. I just got involved with the project this year, so I'm not sure why the budget was approved prior to council permission to move forward.
Okay. Any other members have questions? I have one. When is this work going to happen? And can someone like myself be on site when the work starts to happen?
Yeah, of course. The plan is to start as soon as possible. But once we get the tender process going, it will probably be late summer is when we would start it. And we're looking to complete it by the fall, before the cold weather sets in for sure.
Rob, I think it was Rob and we were part of the Places of Worship Committee. And I think we went to Greenwood and we looked at the chapel there, the church. I don't think we had an opportunity to see inside of the crypt, which may be also something valuable for the committee to potentially see at some point. So thank you for that. Patrick also has a report on this. So Patrick, do you want to do your part now?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll just put my presentation back on the screen. So through the chair, this is a staff report for Heritage Permit HA 0522 for the Waddington Crypt and Greenwood Cemetery. This is an individually designated property. It was designated in 1996. Next slide. As Amanda noted, at this time, we're seeing that roof deterioration and resultant, not so much spalling, but a definite loss of mortar and bowing outward of the wall. Next slide, please. These are just some photos I took, and I think just to potentially address a question about the windows, if you're referring to those white panels on this particular photo, those are actually stones with names of the interred. Those aren't, they're more like blind windows. They're not real windows that would lead to a view. They just have the names of those who were interred in the crypt. So those are, I think, marble. They are features of the crypt itself and will be retained. Sorry. The bulk of the work is in close-ups in those photos with the yellow dashed outline. That's where there's a significant amount of mortar deterioration, and that is the principal area where the wall is sort of pulling away from the interior structural walls of the crypt itself. So next slide, please. So in talking with Public Works and in doing my site visit, we noticed there's a bit of modeling in the brick. We see some sort of tan, not quite buff yellow, but tan and copper color bricks, but there is a range. So just doing some research and talking with Amanda, the plan is to look at the range of Ontario bricks that are made today, Ontario size bricks, and the colors that are available. As many of the bricks that can be saved will be saved and reused. So the wall is being rebuilt with the existing material as much as possible. And so maybe small sections will need modern materials to replace, but it's anticipated to be fairly limited. Next slide, please. For the clay tile roof, again, similar plan as many of those tiles are being replaced. This is, as Amanda noted, and I believe her and her colleagues were able to determine the manufacturer of the original clay tiles. And I'm probably going to say the company's name wrong. The Ludoviki Clay Tile Company of Chicago. Their maker's mark was stamped in the back of those clay tiles. And that is just a product sample from their webpage. So again, as many of those original clay tiles are being retained as can possibly be retained. Next slide, please. Ultimately, we review this work against the standards and the Parks Canada standards and guidelines. And of the main standards, standards 8, 9, and 13 really relate to ongoing maintenance, repair, and conservation, or matching original features with modern equivalents. Considering that as much of the original exterior wall is being reused as possible and rebuilt, the bricks, that mortar will be chosen to match both performance and color. And similarly with the clay tiles, this is an example of work that really does meet the standards and guidelines for conserving the Waddington family crypt within the Greenwood Cemetery. And so on that basis that it meets the applicable standards, it will maintain the crypt and address the serious deterioration that we have seen with this crypt. It is an appropriate alteration. Staff recommend approval for this alteration.
Okay, any questions for Patrick? Go ahead, Councilor Terrace.
With respect to integrating the new brick to the old, I guess it'll probably be randomized.
Yes.
And there's an interesting project on William Street. I don't know if you're familiar with this one. There's a new part of a new structure built, and the owner commissioned an artist to hand paint the brick to match the existing. You seen that?
I don't know which property would be off the top of my head. If you give me an address, I can swing by and
I'll
take a
find
look
the
at it.
address for you. It's phenomenal. And somebody can go to that effort. I'm not recommending it, but
I have seen it in other cities, other communities, and I've seen it on Brant Avenue. I believe one of our prior heritage permit applications. I think the first one I dealt with when I came to Brantford, that applicant was going to go with it was already painted. They were going to go with one color, and they ultimately make it look weathered. In this case, not painting it, it will stand out a little bit at first, but that will allow the brick to weather naturally, just like the existing brick.
that's really good work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A quick question, I guess, for Patrick. I'm pretty sure he already alluded to this. Based on your site evaluation then, you noted it was already had lime-based mortar,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
based on the age, it's.
and then you're using lime-based.
Yeah, sorry, well,
mortar.
Public Works will be using the lime-based mortar and has their specifications from the tender document are as part of the submission materials, and they call out the mortar to match.
This is the only correct in,
Through the chair, I believe it's the only crypt, because there is a small chapel that is, it's a lot, the chapel itself is larger than this crypt, but I believe this is the only crypt.
and the Waddington family didn't leave us a mysterious $1 million slush fund to take care of its repair.
Through the chair, I'm not privy to that. If we did have a mysterious slush fund, I don't believe we would be advertising that fact in our tender document for, like, as Amanda noted, for fear that people may quote said account.
And if someone wanted to erect a crypt in the city cemetery today, we would not allow that.
Through the chair, I can't speak to that. I don't work in the cemeteries department.
Okay.
I'd have to defer to them.
I'll ask a question later. but-
Every
go ahead.
cemetery plot is so complete with perpetual care. They probably would have paid about $1 for their perpetual care back in the 1860s.
Steal of a deal. Okay.
Nathan, just.
Yeah.
Do we know when the members of the family were removed from the crypt?
I don't think, I don't believe there's been any disinterment.
So, okay,
So
it's still
again,
a sealed crypt.
So the
Sorry.
structure of the crypt is
thought-
such that there are multiple walls, and there's an internal wall, there's a middle wall, and then the external wall. And right now, the alteration is only for the exterior
Exterior.
wall. Roof. There is the exterior structure with the clay tiles, and then there is an internal ceiling and an airspace. So there's no disinterment happening with this alteration. This is purely exterior work.
I have the sense it was empty.
So they're still in there.
Yeah, they're still there.
Yeah. People are still in there, being kept at bay. Perfect. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be interesting to see if we can find the descendants?
Yeah. That would be really interesting. I don't know. I'll have to think about that one a little bit.
When I say, wouldn't it be interesting if we could find the descendants, of course, I mean the chair.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be my problem to deal with. I don't know if we could, I'll do some thinking about that, see if we can stir anything about. So the recommendation is that this be approved. Would anyone like to make that motion? I see Councillor Wall.
Oh, sure, yeah, I'll move the motion.
Seeking a seconder. I see Mr. Sullivan there with his hand up. Thank you. Any discussion on this? Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, so I mean, I really do like the idea of trying to find descendants, and I understand that may more so fall on the role of you as the chair, but I mean, like, if this is gonna be a project that's gonna be meaningful to people, and especially because of the significance of, memorials of this kind, I mean, I don't know why we couldn't potentially maybe ask through council or through staff to work with our communications department to maybe put something up online about how, the city is taking care of this site and we're restoring it, and that, we would love it if there was living descendants who were available to maybe pay the respect. Like, I don't know, I just think that that could be a really good feel-good story in a time when we need feel-good stories like that, especially because of the significance of this. So I don't know if that's something we could do. I'm kind of seeking. Is that something we can ask from the communications department on whether or not they might want to?
Through the chair, council can direct staff to undertake certain projects. I don't know what fee such research might require, if it's through the museum or through other sources. I know in long range planning, we do not have genealogical information. So we would have to look at some way to get that information, which
So more so my question, I suppose, is could the city's social media and communications team put out a post saying, hey, do you or does anybody know who?
Through the, I can only assume they can do that. I just can't speak for them.
So are we able to ask them to maybe
You may be able to put a request into communications.
And then to have them
And they
send,
may be able to, but that would be something that you would have to pursue outside of probably the
Got it.
committee.
I understand.
I also think you could, there's a motion there, and you could add on another clause that the committee supports reaching out to potential Waddington descendants about the refurbishment of their crypt or something.
Or just information on the family, like who they were.
Right, so we want to add a,
A clause.
Right.
That would be approved, and that the Heritage Committee support working with the communications department.
Maybe requesting assistance.
Or, yeah, requesting
so requests that staff
Assist communication staff, assist with connecting with living descendants.
living descendants of the Waddington family.
Seeking a second. Or no, I guess I moved it if it's
We
friendly.
moved it, and Michael seconded it, so as long as Michael's okay with adding that in as a friendly amendment, which he's nodding, so that is a friendly amendment. So we have the approval plus additional comment. Any other questions before we vote?
With respect to what's been accepted as friendly. In past, we have looked for family descendants of the people we honor on the wall downtown. I've got a bit of trepidation about social media hunt for descendants of these folks. And I'm thinking that it's all well and fine for us internally to conduct a search, but I put my place in the place of those folks who we are hunting, and they may not want the notoriety, they may not want the recognition, they may not want anything other than anonymity. And I think before we do anything public, we should probably do our best to get in touch with them and see if this is something that they'll embrace. And if not, we should probably respect the fact that they don't want that kind of public notice.
Mesh.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, with respect to what Councilor McCurry just said, I don't know if it says anything specific to social media, so maybe the request could be for communications to potentially reach out.
that the Brantford Heritage Committee requests that staff assist with connecting with family members of the descendants.
stop is the perfect word. Yes.
Okay,
That-
you're happy then, Councilor McCurry?
I just don't want to see it in,
No,
I
that
don't want to
makes,
see it on Facebook.
it's a respect thing. I respect that.
Okay. Any other comments before I call a vote? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. I declare that carried then. We'll move on to item 4.4. This is the Heritage Register, Part 2, Phase E. We are in, go ahead, Patrick.
Thank you, Chair. Just wait a moment while the clerk puts my PowerPoint on the screen. Thanks, Lisa. So through Chair, this is the staff presentation for Heritage Register Project Part 2, Phase E. Next slide, please. As we do every time, we'll give a brief recap for anyone who might watch this presentation recording and want some background on the project. So the Ontario Heritage Act sets up a requirement for municipalities to maintain a heritage register. And those registers must include all the designated properties in the municipality, but they may also include non-designated properties as listed properties. Listed properties are believed to have cultural heritage value or interest. In order to list a property, council must approve the addition and must consult with its heritage committee, in this case, the Brantford Heritage Committee, before that property can be added or removed. Next slide, please. So designated properties are regulated by a bylaw registered on title. The city has 90 days to review a permit to alter or demolish the building or alter the property in a way that might negatively affect its heritage attributes. And the approval, it can be approved with conditions, or denied. And a heritage permit is required for alterations. For listed properties, which are non-designated, there's no legal document registered on title. The city has up to 60 days to review a notice of intention to demolish. If a decision is not made within 60 days, the demolition permit can proceed and be approved. There's no further step. And a heritage permit is not required to alter a listed property. So next slide, please. So part one of the project was background research, and that was conducted between 2017 and 2020. 832 properties were identified for listing as part of part one. And in August 2020, council approved the listing of 98 priority properties. Part two, council is considering the remaining properties of that 832 property list. And that is occurring in 8 phases from 2021 to 2023. Each phase consists of consultation with property owners. Next slide, please. So this phase of the project is phase E. There are 85 properties in this phase that were identified in part one of the Heritage Register project. Now, phase E is for a portion of the old North Ward, the northeast portion, that's northeast of Brant Avenue, and the Terrace Hill area of Brantford. As noted in the staff report, there was a bit of a mix-up with our consultants, and in their scheduling, their field review occurred in the current, what we're calling phase E or area E right now. Originally was conceived of to be the southwest side of Brant Avenue, but because of the intensive nature of doing the field visits across neighborhoods in a city, we were not able to send field surveyors back out to verify the integrity of buildings in the southwest portion of the old North Ward. So we made the decision to simply just swap the order of the 2 phases and keep the project on schedule overall. So phase E will be the last phase going to council for decision under the current council, and we will be beginning with phase F under the new council. So next slide, please. So in phase E, ASI reviewed demolition and building permits, and they completed another survey to verify that there were no substantial physical changes to properties. Another matter that was brought to staff's attention was that in that list of properties that were flagged for review in part one, there were a number of properties that, while originally identified, did not get the full review and assessment in part one of the project. In this case, we are bringing these properties forward in the phases that they are geographically within. So 8 additional properties, most of them along Waterloo Court, were added to phase E. And that brings our total up to 93 properties for review. Notice to property owners was sent on June 6th, and a virtual public information center was held on June 20th. We kept this PIC virtual, being cognizant of the time of year we are approaching summer vacations for many, and we felt that with that potential and also the break-in in council's meeting schedule, having a virtual PIC that was recorded would allow anyone who was not able to attend view that PIC and get project information in the next 2 months. Of the 93 properties that were considered, 91 properties are recommended to be added to the Heritage Register as non-designated listed properties. At this time, we have not received any requests to not add properties to the register. However, property owners do have until the end of August to submit any letters. Those will be included in staff's report to committee of the whole. Next slide, please. So of the 2 properties that are no longer recommended for listing, the 2 properties are 128 West Street and 22 Terrace Hill Street. 128 West Street was reviewed in part one and had exceptional integrity and met the criteria of being representative of its architectural style. Between part 1 and part 2, the property was altered. The original windows were removed, and the wooden fascia trim and brackets under the eaves, they were removed as well. So the property's overall integrity went from exceptional to sufficient, but under the methodology, representative of the Italian architectural style is considered a lower ranking criteria, just because Italian is a very common style comparatively in Brantford. So it didn't meet the methodology, having only one lower tier criteria met. 22 Terrace Hill Street is representative of the neo-Gothic style of architecture, but only has sufficient integrity. It was originally rated a bit highly, and then on further review, it did not fit that exceptional criteria. And so again, it found itself in an essentially similar position as 128 West Street, in that while it is sufficient criteria integrity, it doesn't meet higher priority criteria within the city of Brantford. So there are other examples of Gothic architecture in the city with better integrity. So these properties, because they don't satisfy that methodology, and that methodology is crucial to the screening and evaluation of properties, these two properties are not recommended to be carried forward and presented to council. Next slide, please. So staff provide the committee with this recommendation. This is the Brantford Heritage Committee's opportunity to provide comments that will be included in staff's future report to Committee of the Whole, Planning and Administration. The target would be the September 6th meeting of Committee of the Whole, which is actually, sorry, a combined meeting. That is the first of 2 cycles in September. We didn't want to target the later one just in case there was, should anything happen or should the meeting run long and we have to defer it. We didn't want to defer it until after the election. This does provide property owners with 2 months to contact staff, ask for information, learn about the Heritage Register project, and if anyone chooses to provide comments in favor of listing and requesting the property be listed, they'll have the summer to do that. But the committee is being consulted before the summer break. We know everyone likes to take their vacations, and we also don't want to compress the review timelines at the end of August or in September. So we're providing the consultation with the committee up front. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions of the Brantford Heritage Committee.
Any questions? Beth, go ahead.
The 7 attendees that came to the public meeting, what was their general take on this project? Were they in favor? Were they pleased to hear that the city is?
I would say there was 1, maybe 2 who had some questions. They weren't opposed, but they hadn't made their minds up yet. And I believe there were 2 that were interested in their properties being listed. I believe one was an owner, the other were representatives for an organization, and that representative felt interested.
Anything else, Beth?
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
The old number 2 fire hall is listed.
Which is going to be demoed for a hospital, I believe.
It's the corporation's intent is for that to be parking. I wasn't sure if you knew that.
I'm not involved in that project. However, if the committee wants to flag that, we can include that in our report to Committee of the Whole, and council can make that decision too. Not list.
I'm sure somebody on council. I wouldn't bother making any changes. That'll get picked up. And the little crescent on Waterloo Street, the mirror image. I know years ago, this committee discussed turning that into a little heritage district. And I wonder if staff might comment on that.
So through the chair, that is one of the sections of the recommendations report from part 1 that went to council in August of 2020. It does have a section that speaks to neighborhoods or areas that could warrant a district, and Waterloo Court is called out in that section.
Okay.
It's just that, well, the properties were called out and recommended for further review as a district, It seems they just weren't formally reviewed and added to the list of properties in Appendix B. It was an oversight, but it was one that I guess I caught.
Perhaps maybe that's something staff could think about, is the methodology for that, and we could, maybe we could have a discussion around that later.
Just for clarity, for record, it's the methodology of recommending districts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this iteration of the committee hasn't had any sort of involvement with the districts, even the existing districts to a great extent.
No, there are some very old districts.
Oh, yeah, sure, yeah. That one's kind of unique, though. It's, what is it, six buildings, 8 buildings?
I want to say it's
Not a
8 to,
lot.
I want to say it's 8 to 10, but I could be wrong.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
And I believe that was in the phase 1 report as well, which I think was August of 2018. Summer of 2018, and that was the recommendation. This should be considered for Heritage Conservation District. And I think that's why they're listing them as a preemptive step to help kind of assist with that. If that ends up coming down the road. Go ahead, Dan.
When your list is put together, do we look back for any demolition permits that are kind of waiting in the weeds, like our previous one on East Ave where it's been approved and
Yeah, so staff get records from the building department of all the permits in that area, and that is provided. So it's buildings to construct or demolish, because if they alter the building, that could remove its cultural heritage value, its integrity. So yes, that information is provided.
Okay. Rob, I see your hand up there on the screen.
Yeah, I have a couple of things I want to highlight just for some wording in the descriptions. I was going to mention the number 2 fire hall, and I would support Councillor McCreary's remarks that that's going to be earmarked for the hospital project, and that should probably get pulled. But number 100 William Street, in the additional information of the name of the dressmaker who was a resident there at one time, it states that she was a dressmaker for Frank Cockshut of the Cockshut Plow Company. And I wonder if we could just consider a slight rewording there for Frank Cockshut of Frank Cockshut and Company, which was his other business that sold dry goods and fabrics. The Cockshut Plow Company, to my knowledge, never sold dresses. So we can just a little bit of a clarification in the wording there. And the other one is to do with 40 William Street. I'm wondering if in the past residents there, I think I was of the impression at one time that that house was associated with the Stedman family. So if that could be checked on, and if that is actually correct, if that could be added to the information regarding that property. Thank you.
I believe Rob is right. I believe that was Margaret's.
Yeah.
I want to say
And
house.
Ruth.
And
Did they live together?
yeah, but we'll be able to check that.
There are 2 months that if there are edits, they can be emailed to staff, and we can incorporate those into the property information sheets when they go to committee of the whole.
Okay, so we're at a place for comments. I don't know, those comments that Rod made, can you converse about those? And we don't have to have anything formal in our comments, or we may not need to have something formally about those 2 properties in our comments.
I have the notes, so we and Rob, feel free to email me those comments as well, just put it in writing.
Okay. So any other comments that we want to add about this? If you have no comments, then we can just have a motion to receive. I want to make sure that there's opportunity for comments if we have any. I feel like maybe I should do one, because this is the first one where we have had no objections. So I think we should say something about that we are excited or
Optimistic.
optimistic about about this area and how the people who reside there clearly value their heritage. So I will make that comment if someone wants to move in second. That as a comment. I see Michael's hand as a mover and Dan Brown's as a seconder. Any other comments before we vote? Go ahead, Councilor Wall.
Yeah, I just want to extend a sincere thanks to everybody who's involved in this project. Just a continued thanks. It's amazing what we're doing here, and it's, I mean, definitely about time that it gets done. I'm excited to see it come to council and can't wait to see what's next.
Thank you. Lise, did you have your hand up? I thought I saw a hand there for a second.
Should we just have a comment saying that we support and approve the listing of these properties to the Heritage Register?
Yeah, we'll include that as well. Okay, so,
Mr. Chair.
oh, sorry.
I just want to come back to the comment I made about not taking the number 2 hall out of the list. Does staff recall if all of the committee's recommendations for listings have been approved by council without recognition of any of the objections? I don't believe council has taken any out.
Through the chair, no. In part 2 of the project,
Yeah.
none of the properties have been not listed when recommended. The only properties that were not listed were the ones in phase or part 1 in August of 2020. There were 3 there were 3 properties. There were 4 objections. 3 properties of the 4 were not listed by council.
Okay. Perhaps we should take out the number 2 hall just to keep our record intact.
That's fine. We can include that as a comment. Do you remember what that was?
No, but it's probably on the information sheet, so staff can work with ASI and remove the number 2 fire hall on the basis that there is a plan,
Lawrence,
a
isn't it?
city plan.
Or is it?
No, it's not.
It's St. Paul.
It's on
St.
St.
Paul.
Paul. Okay, so we'll add that as a comment as well. Okay, did I get a mover in the seconder?
You did.
Okay, perfect. Got to make sure that has happened. So we have our comments and our few comments there, are 3 comments, one from me, one from Lise, and one from Councilor McCreary. Any other discussion before I call the vote? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. I declare that carried. We will now move on to consent items. So we have the minutes from our last meeting. So looking for a mover and a seconder. Council McCreary, or sorry, Council Wall, you were here.
It makes
Good.
us up all the time.
And I see Michael seconding. Any errors or omissions, things that need to be corrected in the minutes anyone noticed? Rob, do you have your hand up for something?
Yes, I was absent from that meeting, but yet in item 4.5, I'm listed as a mover of the motion recorded there. So that is incorrect.
And bring it back at our next meeting then? Yeah, okay. So motion to defer to the next meeting. Can our mover and seconder agree to that? So we Council Wall and Michael. Deferral until the next meeting until we can tidy up that item. Friendly? Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So now we're voting on deferral. Everyone's clear what we're voting on? Yes? Is that a question, Michael, or you were getting ready to vote there? Okay, perfect. So now I'll call the question. All those in favor of our deferral? Thank you. I declare that carried. There are no subcommittee updates because subcommittees have not met. We should do that heading in towards the fall. There are no resolutions, no notices of motion. So I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Darren Brown, thank you very much, everyone. Hope you all have a great summer and look forward to seeing you at our next meeting, which is in September.
September,
No July meeting.
September 19th.
September 19th. So we'll see everyone on September 19th, okay? Thank you, everyone, for a great meeting.
Great work, Sharon.